right, welcome to Growing Your Visual Practice. We're going to just go ahead and dive in. So welcome. I just really like this chalkboard type thing. So just a really quick overview. We're going to do welcome introductions. Then we're going to do an activity, a taking stock activity about your kind of business. So this is really a workshop for diving into what it is to really build up a business and grow your business from like on the infrastructure side. So not necessarily client facing, a little bit on that, but kind of just building up the underlying systems and processes and things like that. And it's also kind of pairing with a workshop that Sarah is doing actually next week about branding, which is really exciting. So it's on the meetup. You want to check that. It's next Thursday at time zones at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Mountain, something. Don't quote me on the time zones. I'm not great at time zone math. But yeah, so today we're going to really taking stock and I have a worksheet that I'm really excited to share. And we'll have just a conversation, a panel about kind of different ways that, that we use systems and what our kind of behind the scenes pulling back the curtain looks like. And then so I'm going to go ahead and start with, I want to do some introductions. Just to kind of get to know everybody and get everyone into the workshop. So just share your name, your location, and what would you like out of today's workshop? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So my name's Tiff Harder. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I would just love to just get like an overview. This is like a baby's first view of doing this as a business. So yeah. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Who would like to go next?
I'll come off mute. My name there, I'm Amanda Schreier from Auckland, New Zealand. And I would like to be able to draw concepts. And so business concept. So that would be interesting to me. I have had a stab at it, but I think I would like to hear from those who have been doing it a while.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
My name is Sarah Spencer. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. And what I am looking forward to today is creating some motivation to keep doing the good work. So just coming together and co-creating something great.
Thank you. Brian?
I'm Brian Tarallo. I'm on the wrong side of a COVID infection. So if I cough a little bit, I hope you'll forgive me. It's the fun things that kids bring home from school. Physically, I'm right outside of Washington, D.C. And what I would like to get out of today's workshop is I really hope that Tiffany and Amanda and anybody else that joins us really gets what they want out of this. So focusing on doing this as a business and the drawing business concepts. Definitely make sure to cover that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm Rachel Thompson. I don't actually realize if I introduced myself. I am a virtual facilitator, a visual graphic recorder. I do a lot of strategy and workshops and things like that. I have a human-centered design background as well. And I'm really excited for this workshop today. So actually, we're going to just start with a baseline assessment. And this is a document that I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to drop in the chat. It's a Google document. And then I will give you a little bit of an overview. And we're just going to actually kind of dive into a bit of reflection or kind of assessment of all those things. But I'm going to kind of walk you through it. And then we'll have a little bit of time to really kind of fill this out and then have a conversation about it. So as people are getting into it, this is really a workshop about growing your visual practice, especially like a bit on the business side. So this first part is really kind of just laying out and capturing the different parts and pieces that like may be in place or may not be in place or that you're thinking about. And I like to think about it as like a house renovation where like this part right here is just you're kind of walking around the house being like, okay, like what do we need to do? Like what's the status of things? So, starting here, kind of your, in your box, you should be able to make a copy of this into your own Google Drive document. Just to kind of think about your organization, your company, like maybe what's the business structure if you have one, who is it for, which, is a really big question. And, sometimes you might not have a complete answer, but just whatever answers you have, maybe what are your current offerings or services, if you have any, or if you're thinking about any. Part one is kind of the resources, like what are the resources that you have available? Like a team, not necessarily employees or people you've hired, but just colleagues that you've worked with, or maybe you outsource some things. So just kind of capturing those. A little bit of the operating expenses, just kind of a way to dive into like, where is your money going? And like, how are you, what are the underlying things that you might need to do, like subscriptions? And I think we have software as a service for a lot of different supporting things, different gear, maybe learning or growth or skill development. And then I like to, supportive services like, a lawyer, an accountant, or maybe, buying some sort of templates or things like that. So just kind of doing a little bit of a walkthrough and like, what are the things you have? Think about the systems and processes, if you have any in place. I've kind of put in some prompts here, and thinking about, as you're going through this, thinking about like what's in place, what's ad hoc, what's working, what would you like to change? With financial, I have a kind of a list of things there and then client and project focused, and then kind of branding and marketing. And this is kind of the very like tactical branding and marketing. I think Sarah's going to talk much more about it in the next workshop about like all of the underlying things, and all of these things is going to go really deep. But this is a little bit of just like what's there, what might you need. Materials, like if you need materials, things like that, templates and things like that. Like just what do you have available, or what might you need? And then engagement. This is really thinking about relationships. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the people you're in relationship with, either clients or partners or contractors? Maybe you outsource something. Leads, like just kind of thinking about what those relationships might look like and how you might be communicating with those people. And the third one is kind of, again, kind of connecting back to branding. It's kind of just thinking about, I know we always think about, at least I did originally, I really got caught up in the logo and then like the social media, but I'm like, so it's just a way to capture it and then come back around to think about like what that looks like and using those things. And then this part 4 is kind of just thinking about, and we're going to really spend some time giving you a chance to kind of think through this and fill this out and do a little bit of taking stock in this moment, like just going to spend maybe 10 minutes or so, 10-15 minutes. And then, as you're thinking about things, and then after we do this, we're going to have a conversation, really thinking about like what came up, what questions do you have? I think we're all maybe in different stages of either building a business or growing a business, or, I know you said you're some are baby steps, some, further along. And then we'll have a conversation about like questions and just things that come up. I think I was talking a little bit quickly, but does anybody have any questions or thoughts before we dive in?
I'll just share that like lead generation, I would love to hear more about that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, in the second part, we kind of get into the conversation more. We're definitely talking about lead generation and work, like building the work, things like that. So we'll spend maybe 10 minutes, maybe 8. We'll do 8 minutes and then see if we need more time. All right. And was everyone able to get into the document and create the yarn? Perfect. Okay. I'm going to set a timer for about 8 minutes. And all right.
I'll say I'm not done, but happy to like go forward. Like, let's keep going. I can do this later as we go.
Yeah, this is it definitely is one of those things that here is a resource that you can, as you want to build it out, just want to give everyone a chance to kind of at least get a little bit organized with their thoughts. Before we kind of really dive in, does anybody have anything they want to share, like as they're filling out, that came up for them before we kind of have a conversation about what this looks like?
I'll just share I have more in place than I was giving myself credit for. Like when I started writing, I'm like, oh, okay, I've got some stuff.
What kind of things do you have in place that you maybe were surprising to you?
Like an invoicing system and, training and templates, learning that I've already done.
Nice. Brian, Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
I had the insight. I pulled just a quick report of all of the stuff that I've just got ongoing, cost of business, whether you're working or not, and there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot just to owning a business. Looking at things like we've got this thing called BPOL in Fairfax County, Business Professional and Occupational License. Just to have your business license, that's a cost. The cost to have Google Drive, the big version of it, Squarespace, domain names, extra storage, Zoom meetings, all of that stuff. And it's, whether or not you're working, you have to pay for that stuff.
Yeah. Here, Brian, do you actually know how much that is per month for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Are you open to sharing that amount?
Sure. I mean, can I share my screen?
Sure.
So I was just filling it out, kind of going through it slowly, right? And I sort of broke it down into like, here's all the software stuff, right? And if you don't know of any of these, just let me know and I'd be happy to tell you what it is. But here's just like the software. And Rachel, what I was trying to do is to organize it into your kind of format, right?
Mhm.
And then I considered all of these utilities. This is sort of the stuff that's operating in the back end, like domain names and things like that. Getting things like business cards, paying credit card fees. I wish somebody had told me that, I'm still looking for somebody who can give me better than 4% for credit card fees. And then covering your own insurance, medical, dental, not to mention business insurance, paying somebody to help prepare taxes. I mean, if you do a lot with other people, that's a lot of 1099s that have got to go out. One of my entities is filed in the state of Delaware, so I got to do that there. Having a registered agent, continuing to keep that going so that I don't have to file all of this stuff, and then all of the stuff for Fairfax County. Now the two things that I do for myself, one of them Sarah already mentioned, which is the IFEP membership dues. And then the other one that I keep, which is as a MBTI practitioner. So that's any questions?
No, I like it. And it is I agree. It's very like these kind of just, do you know how much that costs like per year or like per month?
I'd have to run another report, but I could figure it out. I'll tell you that the two that are on here that maybe people don't know about, Calendly is pretty big now. That's out there. Most people know what Calendly is. There's a couple that are really cool. One of them is called Session Lab, which I use for designing meetings. It's really, really great for it's made for trainers and facilitators, but just the meeting design. Session Lab it's phenomenal. And then another one, which is great for any visual practitioner, something called Small PDF. So you can take a really high resolution picture of something, run it through Small PDF, and it'll just, compress it a lot better, I think, than Acrobat will do it. But Rachel, let me get back to you on like the total cost of all that stuff. It's going to be a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm curious because I actually, I think I mapped it out. I have like a spreadsheet that has my year and I have like the recurring expenses. And I think it's about $700 a month is just like the baseline and not including like any other kind of the random things. Like I have some of the yearly subscriptions and things like that. And that includes like a lot of that is actually my health insurance because
yeah, well, if you want to, okay, so if we're doing the monthly recurring and including health insurance in there, then for me, it's around $15,000.
Yeah.
That's a spicy meatball.
That's well, you also have, I mean, you probably have better health insurance than I have. You also have a lot more people on it.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So it's sort of interesting filling out this activity sheet. And what I realized was the team. So the things that were really kind of impactful to me or are impactful to me are the team is my team. So like the people that I surround myself with. Mm-hmm. So I've found that in my business, having people everywhere from sort of the obvious stuff, which would be like an accountant or tax prep person, all the way over to collaborators is really important. So keeping, especially as a solopreneur, having a stable of people who I can call, turn to, ask questions, whatever, has been very, very important. And and say, for instance, like Amanda, it might be interesting for you to, you could become a IFEP member if you wanted to. Maybe your company would pay for it. That would be really great. And then being able to have people basically on speed dial who you can call to ask questions. So I called Rachel and Brian, or text them once a week and be like, hey, what do you think about this or whatever? And so that was one of the things that really stood out to me, was that I feel like I have even though I'm a solopreneur, I have a really strong foundation of team members and collaborators around me that really help.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think I've definitely, I read a book a while ago called Company of One. And it's kind of thinking about goals. So no desire to grow to a big company, but I like working with people, not necessarily for people. I don't necessarily want people to work for me, but I like working with people. And so really I've put myself and trying to set up my business to kind of support that. I think it's really interesting. Amanda, do you have anything you want to kind of add or share? And you're on mute.
I noticed that in that list, Brian, that there wasn't anything like a software license for something if you were doing your work digitally, because there's so much remote work these days.
You're right. So what should have been on there's two that I do pay for, and for whatever reason it just didn't show up on that quick pull. One of them is for Procreate, but that's a one-time purchase. You got it, and then you got it. The one that kills me every year, but I'm going to keep paying it, is the Adobe Creative Cloud, which I think is up to like $600. And it's like, what choice do we have?
Yeah.
So that's the same. But I've decided to just keep to Illustrator, just the one, because it's cheaper and I'm paying for it myself. Yeah, and my work doesn't supply it. So yeah, you have to make some calls.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And think about the business, it is nice to step in and be like, okay, I'm paying for all these subscriptions. What am I actually using? How am I actually using things? And you're just thinking about the business side, I think I had Canva for a while, and then I stopped, and I'm like, I think I might start up again, just because I'm like, that's support, but also, it's what, $12, $15 a month, which, isn't a lot, but then if you add it up, it's at some point you get to what, Brian was 15,000 a month. How much of that?
Not a month. That was over the whole year.
Okay, I was like, that seems like a lot. 15,000 a year. Yeah, I mean, that still is a good chunk of change. So, all right. So what, I know, Amanda, you were talking about a lot of those things. So maybe, do you want to do you have a question you'd like to kind of just put out there that you'd like to have a conversation about, or Tiffany as well?
So the one thing that I would like to see if you could cover this also, because as we were going through, I was thinking, okay, so visual facilitation in in a workshop, what would that look like? Because I mean, I prettify things on the board, it's like, this is the agenda, and this is I draw up a little Kanban board, and to do, doing and done, and this is a when we talk about agreements, I put like a little metaphor for agreements, but I would like to see how you do it. What visualization would you use for meeting facilitation as well?
Brian?
Or workshop facilitation.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So, I mean, here's an example. This is a graphic facilitated meeting. Rachel, you were there. You remember this one. So what we had is you're looking at basically the inside of a barn. Okay. And it had been converted for meeting space. And it's a little tricky to tell, but around the entire room, we had these big foam core panels on easels, and we had prepared visual templates for participants to then go and fill out. And I think the big difference between, of course, graphic recording and visual facilitation is that graphic recording tends to be the silent scribe, right? Sort of the modality of something like this. Let me see if I can pull this one up. Like this, where the meeting is happening over there, and you're over here and you're just kind of quietly taking notes. And the difference between then graphic recording is, rather than, just being the silent scribe, is that you're actually, when you're graphic facilitating, is you're engaging the process. You have created a process for the participants to lean into, and they are the ones that's doing most of the work in the space. Does that, and Rachel, Sarah, how does that sound?
And I think one way, even in in this specific workshop, like I created this is kind of like the worksheet I put out. It's a worksheet is like a visual template. And, it's something where, we're kind of, this is, maybe I could guide people through it more, box by box, moment by moment. But I thought, this thing a little bit more free flowing, but it is like a visual template that you can use as an anchor for the process. So that's kind of just an example of maybe how we're doing it here.
Yeah.
Does that help?
I would just love to hear what do you all use for tracking expenses? Like, is it the Excel? Is it Access? Like, how do you do it without making a lot of work about the work?
I can go. Yeah. So I have QuickBooks Self-Employed. And then I have my bank accounts just connected to it. And then like it categorizes all the things. And then I also run my invoices through QuickBooks actually. So that's kind of an all-in-one place for me that most of my money management is through that. I also use a process called Profit First, which is a bit of bank accounts slash, it's like a cash flow system. So like for QuickBooks, I use that for kind of bookkeeping and accounting. And I always kind of slightly don't remember the difference, but like, tracking expenses in QuickBooks, but then cash flow. So I have, my business bank account. So all of my income, my like non W-2 income, if I get a check, I just put it in one bank account. And then I do it at the end of basically end of the month. I will just take whatever I've been paid. So say I've got like $5,000 that month, then I'll do percentages. And this is the Profit First system. So I'll pay myself like in another bank account, 5%, which is like profit. And then I set aside, I think 25% for taxes in another bank account. So I have a taxes account, which is really nice because then when I pay taxes, quarterly estimated taxes, which you need to do, I think in the US, at least if you're self-employed, it's just there and I don't have to it's just so easy. And then I pay my operating expenses, which is, based on, the kind of the one we're talking about, like the $700 a month, depending on, unless I, I'm going to go to a conference or I, buy a new computer, and then sometimes it's more. And then I pay myself. I set up a reoccurring payment on the first of the month where from my business is called Daring Stews. For my Daring Stews account, I just I pay myself the beginning of the month, and that's how I pay my personal expenses. So that's kind of my cash flow system. I don't know. Brian, Sarah, do you have different stuff?
Yeah, mine's pretty much the same. I don't have children, and so my life is pretty simple in that way. And I do the same thing. I use QuickBooks. I have a credit card is where I pay everything on the credit card, and I don't, and so all of my monthly expenses are on there. And then that way I really know, kind of when things go up and down. And then the other thing I do, which I don't know, might not be necessary, but I do it anyway. I have an Excel spreadsheet that I, every time I spend some money or spend money on the business, I put it into this. It's actually kind of related to my tax expenses. But what that does too is that it makes me stop and think. So it's like, it's really easy for me to use a credit card. But then when I go that extra step to like take that expense and put it into an expenses document that I'm going to use at the end of the year for the taxes, it really helps me to kind of mentally and physically keep track of like how much money I'm spending. I'm like, okay, like this is, I have a lot of like feelings around that. So just like, I'm like, okay, I've been spending a lot. So I got to like see how I can like curb my spending or do some more business development or something like that. So I just take it a little bit, one step further into an Excel document, but that ends up just being used for taxes at the end of the year. But I like like just the process of using it throughout the year.
Yeah, I actually have a spreadsheet as well, which I use. So it's like two systems together. I have, and that's actually my whole, all of the money, like personal and professional, they're separated. I actually was going to pull up a template and show
Oh,
you.
yes. Templates are one of my love languages.
So I'm just gonna. And this is something that I have been doing. Hold on, I'm gonna find it. For like 6 years or so. And then I've been like updating it as I go. I'm gonna make a copy. But yeah, so I have a spreadsheet, and that's really like I reconcile like my expenses and be like, okay, how much did I actually spend both professionally and personally? And then I also forecast forward of like, you know, I have my reoccurring expenses forecasted forward, but also my potential income. And then, you know, so if I have a big expense, like, oh, I'm going on a trip to Europe in July, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be spending more that month, you know, or, you know, just mapping that out. So as I'm pulling that up, maybe, I don't know, Brian, if you want to share.
Not really, because yours are way more sophisticated than mine. I really just have 3 spreadsheets, and that's it. I've always done it that way. You know, I studied finance for a while, so it's like I don't. I know this sounds weird. I don't trust like QuickBooks, Quicken. Like I want to see the whole thing laid out in front of me, and something about just putting entries in. It's just like it just kind of skeeves me out. So I like to do everything off of a spreadsheet. So I don't have an accountant. You know, I just reconcile at the end of the month with my credit card statement. And I guess I'm kind of a control freak that way. So sorry, that's
No,
probably
that's
not that
cool.
helpful.
But what are the 3 spreadsheets? What system do you
What are the
have
3
here?
spreadsheets?
If you're comfortable.
Yeah, sure. So I've got one that I call my business pipeline, where I'm tracking all of my opportunities. And Tiffany, I'd actually like to show you that one, or at least the theory behind it, because
Yeah.
that's where we go from like lead generation to discovery to proposal to opportunity, right? Then I've got another one. Once the work is done, I've got just an invoice tracker, and that's all it is. Okay, it's like what's out there, and as soon as something comes in, I log it in the invoice tracker, and I copy that line and drop it into what really is my books for the year, which is my register. And so that's just like a checkbook register. So somebody pays me, I log it on the invoice register, I copy the line, drop it into my, you know, whatever that year's register is. And that's how I you know, square up at the end of the year.
Cool.
I actually tried to do a spreadsheet for that, but I have a I guess a Word document right now. And this is one of those things that like I kind of was like, a question I had was, do I need a more different system for that? Because like it's just a Word document. But that's how I track, like if someone says, oh, like you might have this work, and like that's like it's my active work and my upcoming work.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's just so helpful, because I feel like there's so many options. I sometimes just end up spinning around with like, oh, is this the perfect one?
Yeah. And then so it's interesting, you know, going back to like getting caught up in the finding the perfect tool. Sometimes I'm like, just find a tool that works.
A tool that works. Yes.
And then, you know, like I tried to use like some like one of those project planning things and just that's, but I didn't actually use it. I'm like, I actually use my Word document. So until that, either I get too much work or it's too complicated, or the one thing I did do is I moved it from my computer to my Google. So it's like actually in Dropbox, so that it's backed up. So that if my computer dies, I can still access it. That was one thing I did recently, but I don't know.
Good call.
So Tiffany, did you say what the structure of your business is? Are you a visual practitioner? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
More about me. So I have a day job. I work at the California Public Employees Retirement System, and I do special projects there. So I do some, you know, graphic recording or really visual facilitation, right? Planning and engagement, and how are we going to engage the senior team? I supported them to do their latest strategic plan. And I work in the investment office. Sorry, I don't know if I said that. I also am a personal and professional development coach. So I do graphic recording for my clients, and I just save those notes in case they're supportive for them. So it's something I want to be doing more of, you know, so I'm very you know, looking like, okay, how do I get more into this space? How do I do more of this? Because it's just really creative and supportive, and I love it. People like it.
Okay. So do you want to keep your current job and grow your outside independent? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So okay, that's helpful. So I think, you know, my opinion is to just whatever you do, make it as simple as possible. You know, QuickBooks might be too much. You know, I don't know if you're into if you have QuickBooks already. Do you have QuickBooks already?
No, I'm a spreadsheet girl.
Yeah, so I'd say probably stay with the spreadsheets until you need, because it's pretty robust, don't you think?
I have
Rachel?
QuickBooks Self-Employed, which I think is it's cheaper, and it's also, I think, a little bit lighter.
Okay.
It's targeted towards solo, like a solo proprietorship, I think. And I like that because, you know, I think I like it because, you know, I have the bank accounts, you know, and I like this is a little bit, I do like maybe double work, but, you know, I reconcile my credit card because I do that stuff, but also it just categorize the expenses. And for me, I like it because it's just the business. And then first of all, it'll tell me like how much to pay in estimated taxes. I just will do that. And then at the end of the year, you know, reconcile that. But it's also like on my phone, I can do mileage. So it's just it's like robust enough, but it's not too heavy, I think, for my needs.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing that you have on your list, Rachel, is like marketing. Is that how you headlined it? So so one thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know how interesting this will be to the two of you, Tiffany and Amanda, but I think that you may consider focusing or putting some focus on your content. So, you know, we've been talking a lot about like the finance stuff and the structure and this sort of thing, and creating a vault of content for yourself is really going to help bolster you moving into, you know, and Amanda, in your case, more into your company, like getting more into your company. And then Tiffany, for you, like really getting more of that like outside work to happen. And so it's sort of like building a portfolio, and in fact, actually, it's not even, it's a lot like so I have a background in graphic design. And so it's sort of like in college, I had to design a bunch of fake projects to put into my portfolio to show people what I was capable of. So it's sort of the same thing with you too. So you're doing work, and document all of that work with photography, organize it in folders. If you can go so far as to even put it into like a Google slide, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Google suite in a minute, but I'd say like once a week, spend a couple hours pulling together content like photography, do like a tear sheet. So if like you do like a case study of of every project you do, like put together a quick case study, because what's going to happen is that maybe not in 6 months, but certainly in 18 months, you continue to move in this direction that you're moving in. And certainly 12 to 18 months, you're going to be looking back at this vault of content that you've had, and then you can pull those things together and create marketing materials. You can create proposals. Like if you wanted to, if something was happening big at your company and you wanted to propose something that they hadn't thought about, you can say, hey, look at this. I did this and I did this and I did this. And you can pull it together and then give it to whoever's running the event or something like that. But really having a vault of content at your disposals is really important for building business.
I really appreciate that. And I would love to hear when you're mentioning case study, I love that idea, like distilling that down. What
Mhm.
are the essential components that you believe matter most when you're thinking about how you showcase?
Well, number one is outcome. So, kind of start with the end. So, and that's kind of the way to design anything, right? It's like, what do you want out of what do you want people to walk away with? So what are people walking away from this successful event or project that you're doing? Like, what are they walking away with? And then back into that, into a case study, back into that, how it is that, visuals and your work as a visual practitioner supported and elevated the experience for people. And as a visual practitioner, you can really, really elevate the experience for people because you can do things that are even more than like the chart that you're working on or the graphic recording that you're taking. So you could come into a room and have the tables designed. So like all the tables have colored pencils and very specific templates that people draw on and write on. And like all the Post-it notes are circular. And why is that? Well, because we own a bubble company. And, so it's like, so kind of thinking about ways that you can create environments that when you take photographs of those environments, that then it makes it look like a more exciting, cohesive, creative environment. So then, as far as a case study, you want lots of photographs and take good ones. Get a good iPhone 13 or I guess 12 has a pretty good camera, or Pixel, I suppose, has a pretty good camera. So take photography. Definitely get quotes. So the best way that I've found to get quotes is to at the end of the meeting, take your phone and just walk up to somebody, ask if you could record them, ask them questions like, how was this? Or what was your favorite part? Or something like that, and get them just to like extemporaneously talk into your microphone. And then you can go home and edit it and send it to them for approval. And then you have a template. So, or testimonial. Thank you. So you could have a template of case studies where every time you finish a job that you have, checkbox, you have a quote, a testimonial, you have photography, you've got bullet points about what the outcomes were, maybe some funny little interesting tidbit that comes out of it, like, a tip or a trick or a gnome sighting.
Yes, more gnomes.
Something like that, just to kind of keep it light and interesting. But I think it's really important in for the business of business to actually have this vault of content that you're always working on.
I think if I could add on that, I think it goes deeper than that too, right? I think, and Sarah and Rachel and I, we've talked about this. One of the things that we tend to resist is what we tend to think of as the show up and draw graphic recording, or that kind of thing, where it's just, okay, just don't tell me any information about the client, don't tell me any background, don't tell me what you want. I just want to be able to sit here and draw. Don't engage with me. And that's something that's like, I think the three of us at least are allergic to that. Like, we really want to partner with our clients. Yes. Sarah talks about creating that experience, that really holistic experience that you go into. There's absolutely nothing wrong with, showing up and drawing if that's the kind of work that you want to do. I think to have real lasting impact and to not be seen as transactional or as a commodity, it takes the level of partnership that Sarah was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know maybe we'll get there, but that stimulates the question in me, because I know when people go and they ask for proposals, they're not going to be using the same language that like we would. So it's like they don't know what they want yet.
Right.
So I'm just interested, like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so that's something I have a video on that. That's called the Sophistication Gap. Okay, and the metaphor that I use is if somebody goes in and they want to make they want a wedding cake, right? So they don't, this person that goes in and is ordering the wedding cake, they don't know the language. They say, yeah, I've seen this thing, and, there's columns on it, and there's big tiers, and, a lot of frosting. Can it have a lot of frosting, right? Like, and the baker in the back of their mind, they're flipping out, right? Because it's like, okay, I know what goes into the composition of a good cake. I think it's really incumbent on the professional, whoever that is, to meet the non-professional where they are. And to understand that both making a wedding cake and graphic recording, they're both aesthetic services, right? And so when you're diving into the aesthetic, you're hitting people in their heart, not in their head. And people have a hard time connecting what they feel they want to how they actually say it. And so, it's almost better just, I always start with examples and say, okay, here's a few different examples of some different graphic recordings. Tell me what's coming up for you. What do you like? Right? What do you like about that? What don't you like about that? And you kind of ease them into it. And you're giving them the vocabulary that they need in order to be able to discern, a good wedding cake and a bad wedding cake, or at least what they want. If they want a bad wedding cake, if I just show up and they want me to draw entirely like no words, no drawings, all words, all in black, all at 1-inch characters, sure, you want me to do that, I'm happy to do that for you. It's not going to look good, but I'll do that for you, right? So if you give them examples and say here's and then give them, as Sarah was saying, the case study. Here's what was going on in that meeting, right? Hi, Nancy. Here's what was going on in that meeting, and here's what we were able to achieve as a result of that process. Is that something that you're looking for?
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I think actually that leads into kind of one question I think came up that we may talk about, maybe kind of moving into the kind of the panel part, but like talking about the discovery process of this is like, I guess, after, in the larger process of getting clients, before the work, you just finding client connecting, that's maybe lead generation we're talking about, but maybe this a little bit after that of, once you kind of are starting a conversation with either a potential client or about a new project, just maybe Brian and Sarah, you maybe just share what your kind of discovery process looks like. And then we can kind of maybe talk about lead generation after that.
Sarah, you want to go first?
Sure. So
I can. It's entirely up to you.
Oh, that's all right. So my discovery process is almost always phone call. Pretty simple. I do like Zoom. We're sort of used to it now, and you can read some body language, but every once in a while I'll just do it on the phone because sometimes I don't want to look at anything. So it kind of depends on, I kind of either do phone or Zoom. And the first thing I want to do is understand the environment. So, kind of like the bullet list, like how many people, what's this for? Is it hybrid? Is it virtual? Is it, those sorts of things. And then I go into asking questions about the outcome. Like, how do you want your participants to feel? Like, what are they walking away with? Like, what's really going to be valuable to these people and that are, attending this meeting? And then when they start giving me answers to that, then I start going through this list of like, okay, these are the things that I can offer. Like, I can offer event branding. So in event branding, I can come in and design the room and create the tablescapes. And I even have like designed menus before that are related to what we're doing. And then I will offer like workshops and all of these things that can help increase the engagement that happens during the meeting. And then the final thing I offer is a document that I put together at the end, which I charge more for. So like if they want it, then they pay for it. And it's a really slick book that I pulled together, and it is an overview of what the days. I've done them for years. I do one every 2 years for a company, and like all of the content designed, and then that's given to the client, who can then disperse it however they want. So that's kind of what I do. I have a discovery phone call, and then kind of compare to what it is that I can offer and basically try to upsell them is really what I'm doing, is upselling people into more services other than just graphic recording, just getting more involved. And Brian, how about you?
Well, Sarah, actually, I'm going to ask a follow-up question before that.
Oh, yes.
So after the phone call, this is kind of just getting into the process of it. So you have this phone call, and then do you like put together a proposal and then send it to them for approval after that? Like, what's that kind of process look like after that?
Yeah. Okay. I guess I didn't finish the loop. So this would be a good time for me to mention Google Docs. So I do try to do absolutely as much as I can on Google Docs. And one of the things I do on Google Docs is my proposals are slides. Or are you going to show something here, Brent? I mean, I can share too.
No, go ahead. I was just going to draw as you talk.
So I will, give me a moment here. I will look up a Google Doc that I use for my proposals. And okay. And now I've got to share my screen. Okay. Here we go. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So then I have this template where it is I've got a template that's like 20 pages. And then I just kind of plug in what I need to and pull out what I don't, and then I send it to them. And what's really great about this is that you have control of this document. So this isn't a PDF that's going out that gets lost, or you don't know who has looked at it, or, or if you want to update it or something. I've done that before, where I've had a proposal out for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and I had a little bit of information come in, like a quote. One time I had a really great testimonial come in that I wanted to replace it, so I just went in and replaced it. So this is a slide. If you learn how to use slides, it's like better than PowerPoint, and you can share it in any way with like everybody with a password. So I've got like the cover sheet. Then I've got kind of like about the company. So here's photography where of projects I've worked on. And then just, about the company. Then I've got about me. So then of course that's just kind of gives some more like bio. And then I go into kind of like some marketing stuff. Now this might be more than I would maybe give some people, but for a larger proposal, people usually want to like get as much content as possible. So then I have a page about like, the benefits that you would get using, my services. And then here are like, for instance, my creative workshops. So then I go into like, okay, these are all the workshops. So what's really cool about Google Slides is that you can connect copy to pages. So for instance, like if this discovery palette here, I can connect this to slide to like the next slide. And I think this is the next slide. And there's the discovery palette. So you can come in here and you can really create this really interactive, cool, slick presentation for yourself. And what's nice about this is that the next time you want to do a proposal, it's already done. You just need to change some copy, maybe throw some numbers in there, and then away you go. And then then I have a folder inside my Google, and I have track of all my proposals. I know when they went out, I know who they went to, and then of course I can update it at will. So then I send that out, and then they go, yay, I love it. And then I write a contract, and the contract's just a Word doc, real simple, legal speak. And I always get, I'm not sure how much that would matter for the two of you that are working or when you're working in-house, it might not matter, but I always get 50% up front, or some amount to, get people sort of on board with the work. So
Thank you.
that answer your question, Rachel? Did I go far
Yeah,
enough?
no, I think thank you for kind of completing the loop.
Okay.
Brian, want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So let me get out of the way first of all. And I think Tiffany, this is probably one of the things that you had listed as one of your outcomes. So here's the way that I think of it. So this is kind of like an old school sales funnel approach to things. But a lead is just like people you know, okay? Or maybe it's even people you don't know, but they're just like people out there. And sometimes, I don't really go and do cold calling ever, but if I did, I would go back to like old clients and things, but those are just people. And I have another Excel spreadsheet that's just I call it a CRM, but it's really just a bunch of like old clients, partners, people that have funneled business my way. And sometimes I'll send like, just emails out to them. But really the opportunity is usually the email that comes in that says, hey, we've got this event. Are you available for it? Right. And then that's where Calendly comes is like, well, yes, let's set up a time to talk. And the thing that, so I had a business coach at one point that looked at the way that I operated. And when he found out that I was spending 60 minutes doing discovery meetings, he said, you need to stop that. That's way too much time doing discovery meetings. So I fired him. Because I'm completely convinced that an in-depth discovery meeting, like even going into some of the delivery, like the design of things, just like what Sarah was showing you, like helping frame the art of the possible there is so important to actually winning the work. So I'll spend a good 60 minutes with people on a discovery, and I want them to get the sense that, by the time we've got this done, it's going to be perfect. You're going to have people come in, you're going to have that rich experience that Sarah was talking about before. And so I'll show you how I go through discovery. But then I write one proposal, which is the same as the contract. It's very light. It really just breaks it down into design and then delivery. I usually just have 2 paragraphs on that. I don't really get into, I like what Sarah does with saying, well, here's the different modalities that we could use. But I want to keep things open because the real work happens in the design side of things. And then if they sign off on that, then I've got my project, I do the work. And then of course, following that, you get invoicing, cleaning up any deliverables. Sarah talked about those books that she makes, and then any sort of aftercare that you do with the client, whether that's an after action report or something else. The thing that's real important to me is this right here, this ratio of how many projects do I win based off of proposal, right? I don't, the rest of them, it's like, okay, I'm not as concerned with those, but that to me, that's my win rate right there. And right now, I looked at it before this. I'm standing at around 87% of a win rate. So for 100 proposals I write, I win 87% of them. And I really think that that's because of the in-depth discovery that I do with these folks. Okay. So I'll show you how I do discovery, but I want to see if there's any questions, especially Tiffany, if you've got any questions about this, just in terms of thinking about the pipeline. Or anybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate the flow. Thank you.
Yeah. There are some people that will look at, they'll go a little crazy with it. They'll say, well, what's our percentage from leads to opportunity, the opportunity to discovery? I think those are kind of phantom numbers. To me, the real where you make it is between the proposal and the project. So a while ago, I came up with this little mnemonic for myself. This is not something that I share with my clients. But it is something that's always at the back of my mind when I'm going through a discovery call. It's called Places Please. Okay. And unfortunately, it doesn't follow PLA because that would have been Alcapes or something. But this is to have a natural conversation with a client. I make sure that I'm hitting each one of these letters. And it actually starts with the A, which is achieve. So what is this thing all about? Like, what do you want to achieve? What's the purpose? And I always ask the question, what does a successful outcome look like? If you could imagine us walking away from this at the end of it, what would success be? What would be going on in the minds and the hearts and the hands of the participants that's there? Okay. Now, usually, here's the C, which is context. You usually don't have to ask for that. They tell you what the context is. We're a 500 person organization. We get together twice a year. They tell you why this thing is happening. And that's all in context, all in the context. You can practice a little bit of appreciative inquiry there. You can say, what's working well? What have you already tried? But really, they tell you most of what you need for that. I like to spend a lot of time on the participants, like just the basics. How many are going to be there, right? And in these days, how many are going to be there virtually? How many are going to be in person? And then I want to know if they're going to need to travel, and especially what is their relationship with each other. And by the way, before I forget, I'm dropping this into Zoom chat so you can have a copy of this, what I'm sharing. But I really want to know their relationship. I want to know if I'm going to walk into any landmines in terms of reporting relationships. If this guy reports to that guy and that guy doesn't like that guy and this group doesn't get along with that group, like I really want to know those sensitivities that are there. Okay. The logistics are the basics, when is it, where is it? And they will typically tell me that if they say, well, we can really spend as much time as you want. I said, well, to get what you really want done, this is going to take a week. They're like, yeah, we got 2 days. So it's a negotiation there. And the thing that really, I have a hard time getting clients to believe this, but boardroom layouts are terrible, right? In terms of real facilitated work. And so I always try to go with pods. That's my favorite. If I'm doing more stuff on the human side, I tend to go more with a circle, right? Without tables or chairs or anything. Like Tiffany, as a coach, I'm sure you get this one. But I really try to avoid the horseshoe, and I really try to avoid the boardroom table if I possibly can. It just sets up the wrong dynamic for what's there. I've got a list of things that you can ask around virtual. So there's 2 things that are on here that sometimes people skip. Now, Sarah has been talking about this the whole time, but what is the experience of this, right? As she's talking about like the colored pencils and things that are laid out on people's desks, just the feel that this is a different kind of experience, okay? Let me go back to the PowerPoint for just a second. This is something that I do in every single one of my discovery calls. I say, okay, this is your culture. Your culture is an envelope. Now, my job as a facilitator is to find the edges of that envelope and to push very, very gently against it so that you end up having conversations that you've never had before. We are creating a new social container. We are expanding the edges of your culture just a little bit so that we can have conversations that you haven't had before. If we don't do that, you're going to have the same conversations you've always had, and you don't need a facilitator. You don't need to have this event. The whole reason we're doing this event is to have extraordinary conversations. And so I'm going to push against your culture. Now, your job is that you need to tell me when I'm pushing too hard and I'm at risk of breaking the envelope because I have no idea how fragile your culture is, okay? If we're going to do trust falls, if that doesn't work for your organization, I want you to tell me. I never do trust falls, but just, as an example. So that really gets back to that experience that Sarah was talking about. Like, how do we set this up as a space for a real extraordinary conversation? And so I want them to really focus on what kind of experience do they want the participants to have? What feeling do they have when they leave the event? And then if you've done this in the past, what has that been like? Okay. So let me cover this last one just to round out the places thing. So S is the spectrum of purpose. By the way, this comes from Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline. So there being 4 kinds of meetings out there, right? There's a tell, which is just informative. This is like a TED Talk. There's nothing wrong with that. We need those kinds of meetings. Then there are sells where it's like, I've already decided what we're doing. I'm the leader. I've decided what we're doing, and I want people to get on board the bus with me, right? So I'm going to explain the benefits of it. Then there's a consult where, again, I've got the idea and I want to get people's feedback. This is like a listening or an advice session, right? So Nova Scribes, we talk about the advice process a lot. That's a consult. Or there's a co-create where we come together as individuals, and as individuals, we share in the responsibility of the decision-making process. That's a co-create. So I really want my clients to be clear on what kind of meeting this is, because that dictates all of the modalities that I'm going to suggest. And then the last one, this is the please, places please. That's just for me to remind myself and to remind my client that my purpose of a facilitator is to, and then fill in the blank. It's to hold the space for others to be successful. It is not to make sure that we have enough bacon on the back table, right? To really get clear on what the social contract is there. Okay. So that's how I do discovery, and that's why it takes about an hour. What questions do y'all have? All right.
Well, now I'm like, well, who is in charge of the bacon, Brian? No, no, no.
I'm not kidding. I actually did an event for a group, and that was the feedback that I got once. You know, I'm totally serious about that. Somebody filled it out on the form. We ran out of bacon. It's like, okay.
All right, noted.
All right. Tiffany, Nancy, Amanda, anything do you want to share? Any kind of particular questions you have? I have a couple of questions I can bring up, but if I'd open it up.
I just want to say
No.
thank you to Brian for explaining the process well. We appreciate it.
Yeah. That was incredibly helpful. Thank you so much.
Hi, Nancy. All right. So I think this, so the next thing I want to do is kind of, I think we've touched on both of the kind of outcomes people wanted. Nancy, did you have a specific outcome you wanted out of this workshop? Just kind of.
No, just general info, and it's all fabulous.
Okay. So I think the next question I'm going to ask is kind of just a little bit in the more, yeah, Amanda, what was your outcome? What would you like out of this workshop?
I thought she had said something about business drawings. Is that right?
Yeah, how can I help people, well, facilitate, for instance, strategic, facilitate a strategic conversation with visuals? I didn't say it like that, but that's another essence of it.
That's a great question.
I think Tiffany might have the answer to that, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of actually the Grove has a course called Strategic Visioning that I took with Brian and Amanda. It's great. It's what, like 4 or 5 days, and it goes through a whole process, and they're so generous with like their leader tools in setting it up. So yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think it's a really big question, and like, not that I don't want to answer it now, but I think it might be slightly larger than this container. We could definitely point you in directions, and I think the Grove has some great stuff.
Can I try to answer it in 30 seconds?
Sure.
All right. So how about we just do some quick, good old school Bic-a-blow style icons. Does that sound okay? So if I was going to, if I'm working with a company, the easiest way I find to represent a company is just to draw an office building. Okay. And there's my company. If I'm working with people, there's a person. And then now I've got absolutely everything that I need in order to in order to represent things strategically. So if I want to show, for example, management of the company, here's my building again, and I'll draw 3 little guys on top, and maybe one of them is pointing. If I want to show like the owner of the company, now I got a big guy over here, and maybe he's got his arm around it like that. If I want to represent different divisions, say we're doing some strategic reorganization, now I got a division. And maybe there's a dotted line to this other guy over here. If I wanted to show a board, here's my boardroom table, same one that I don't like to facilitate around. And there's the company on it. And now I got my board. Just like that, right? Let's say that I need to, represent something like production. Well, I can kind of draw a factory like that. Or let's say I needed to do, I don't know, change management. So I can draw my 3 people like that. And then I'm not great at these arrows, but something like that. Okay. And that's about all I can do in about 30 seconds. But even if it's just something as simple as adding some iconography to what you're already doing in the room to make it that much more visual, rather than saying strategy, just drawing this shape, whatever it is. So that's one step in the right direction.
Thank you, Brian. All right. So I'm actually going to kind of, move to the official kind of the panel. I think this has been a very incredible conversation, but I do want to kind of step back a little bit and then maybe ask Brian and Sarah, maybe Sarah first. Can I just introduce yourself and your business, and kind of maybe your business in the kind of when and how did you start, and maybe what in a minute or two, like what's the story of your business, like how does it work structurally or something like that. Just kind of a little bit of orientation for each of the businesses.
Okay. So my company is called 26 Letters Studio. I come from a design background, design and illustration background. So the whole visualization part of it comes pretty natural to me with using metaphor and that sort of thing. And I fell into this business because I'm a natural sketch noter. And I had a friend who needed a graphic recorder, and she goes, "Oh, you'd be great for this." I'm like, "I don't even know what graphic recording is." She goes, "Well, Google it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I think I could do that." So I ended up, my very first job was this 5-day graphic recording, and I show up and they have it all set up for me. I just brought my markers, and it was, the 4-foot sheet of paper, and it was 20 feet long or 25 feet long. And I was tasked with filling it up for 5 days, and they had no idea. They're like, "You're the professional, you have to figure it out." So I created a series of questions that I asked the people as they came through to answer, and then I drew those answers on the wall. And so a lot of them were customers of this particular client. And what was really great about that is it showed me, as well as everyone else, how important it is to capture things graphically, because first of all, it's more interesting to read. And as a graphic recorder and a graphic facilitator, we just naturally know how to organize things or organize information, so it's easier to understand. So that's sort of the background. I've been doing graphic recording and graphic facilitation for about 5 or 6 years professionally. And I think it took me about 2 years of doing something else, 2.5 years of doing something else in order to get over the hump of startup. And really what I think 2 things got me through kind of the beginning years. Well, having another job or some kind of other income to keep it going was the one thing. But creating content, which I talked about earlier, always creating content and having this vault of content that you can pull from for everything from social media to creating proposals, and also networking and asking. That's probably one of the greatest lessons I learned, is just to ask, because that's the worst that can happen. Someone will say no. So what happened just a few weeks ago, there was a 4-day event, and I was invited to the first 2 days of the event, and I drew for the 2 days. And at the end of the second day, I'm like, "Can I come back tomorrow?" And they're like, "Sure." So they just didn't think about it. So in growing your practice, or in growing my practice, and my suggestion or my advice out to you is to, whenever you are engaging in a graphic recording or graphic facilitation, ask what's next, or how can I create more of an experience in this particular experience with my talents as a visual practitioner. Rachel, is that all the questions?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Okay.
Brian, maybe you want to tell your kind of story?
I loved hearing Sarah's origin story. That was so cool.
Right?
So I went back and I in preparation for this, I actually looked at some old journals. I realized that my first facilitation was done in 2001 as a Peace Corps volunteer. And then after that, after grad school and a couple of false starts, I really started full-time facilitation around 2008 and 2009. And I started graphic facilitating at the end of 2009, and I found my first graphic facilitation, which I will pull up right here. There we go. So it was, so it's very Grove influenced. I was basically like trying to do a graphic game plan, and that was it, so it's a lot of chalk and, very Grove colors with a big horizon on the bottom. So that was my first one. And then more recently, here's one that I did. Rachel, when was this one?
March 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, so this is just like March of this year. Oh yeah, thank you. There's the thing. So, took a while, but I've gotten a little bit better since then. And I want to kind of bonus off of what what Sarah said. I love, asking about like what's next. What I had to do, because when I started, I was internal to an organization, right? Amanda, sound familiar? I had to stop asking. I had to, because I would go and say, hey, we've got this meeting coming up. Can I graphic record for it? And people are like, I don't know what that is. Nah, I don't know. I don't know what that is. So I just quit asking. I would walk into the room, uninvited, not even on the meeting, hang a big piece of paper up and just start doing it, And whether they wanted it or not, I would just start graphic recording, and I wouldn't explain it. I would just say, here you go. And then I take a picture of it and say, here's the notes from today. It's a little bit more interesting than, your T-Rex is banging away at keyboards, isn't it? And so, I think that there's a lot of, the spirit is the same, of really leaning into this, of not permission seeking on the one hand, but also like really saying, okay, perceiving that value that you bring and leaning into it, like Sarah says, asking what's next. In my case, not asking for permission anymore, because people weren't going to ask for it if they didn't know what it was.
Thank you. Yeah, and I actually am going to share a little bit of mine, just so I really got into, I got into facilitation in college. I was a TA and actually facilitated one of the, classes. And then after college, really got into again, and then got into design thinking. And out of that graphic facilitation, just, I saw someone doing it and started learning it and really flexing that skill. And I also really, I just want to circle back around to, and this is like, that's kind of talking about like this, the skill of it. I'm really curious, I guess, Sarah and Brian, if you could share about the kind of, how did you decide or make decisions about like the business of it, like lizard brain and 26 letters and setting that container up to hold the work? Like, what did that look like? Sarah?
Sorry. I start like which is what I do with my clients too. Always start with my values. So I value, well, my top values are beauty, strength, and joy. And joy being the top one. So I always have to have like a spirit of joy or happiness in my soul before I say yes to anything. Otherwise, I mean, I've done things that have made me miserable, but then I regret it. So I just would prefer to do things that make me happy. So I determined what my values were around the work that I was doing. And what I have come to and what I really love is doing culture work with leadership development and team building. So I don't do strategy, or I don't do much strategy. I work with other facilitators to do strategy, but really what I've done is created these like really hard boundaries around the work that I do. And that creating that niche for me has worked out really well. So as long as the work that I go for and accept fits in with my values and what I really love to do, then that's a green light for me.
Brian?
Yeah, so like Sarah, mine was also values driven, except in my case, I formed Lizard Brain out of the value of anger. So what happened was that I had been working for a small boutique consulting firm, facilitation firm, and we had a very sacred rule, which is when someone is facilitating, you leave them the F alone. Because, if you're doing that, right, you're starting at 6 a.m., you're ending at 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes you're running to Walmart trying to figure out how you're going to build a gorilla costume in the dead of night. You're redoing things. You don't know what it is that you're getting into, but you do whatever's there. And so I was doing this week-long facilitate. Well, here's what happened. We got bought, right? We got bought by a big company who did not share our values. And, I was at this week-long offsite, pulling these crazy 16-hour days. And I just, going back to my hotel room, I opened up my laptop and there's this string of emails about how I hadn't updated my resume in their talent database. And it was like, are you kidding? And like my supervisor's getting emails and I'm getting in trouble and they're threatening to dock my salary and all this. And I was like, that's it. I'm out of here. So so how does this tie into Lizard Brain? So I'm going to go back to this chart, which I showed you before. So we were teaching crucial conversations, which is about how to have really high energy conversations. And in that, it talks about the lizard brain hijack, the amygdala taking over, and just getting just furious. And I was like, I'm experiencing lizard brain hijack right now. That would be a great name for a company. So rather than filling out this resume, I got onto incorporate.com and, it incorporated the name right there and on the spot. So it was born out of, why am I working so hard, to make somebody else rich? I can do this for myself. There were two things that really led me to feel safe about doing it, though. Okay. One thing that I did that I think was real important is I just did a little bit of math and said, okay, what are my monthly expenses? And how long am I going to give myself to see if I can get this off the ground? Right. And so I decided to give myself about 6 months. So 6 times whatever my monthly expenses were, I saved that and I put it aside. If I can't make this work in 6 months, then I'm going to put my resume out there and see if I can get a job. The second thing that I had was a good book of business. So just like Sarah was talking about, partners, past clients who had moved to different places, and it's more about the people than it is about the organization. I have followed more people than I have organizations as they move from, management role to management role. So between that safety net of the 6 months in my case, and the book of business, I felt pretty confident. And I was, thankfully, when I quit my day job, I was profitable from day zero. I just the next week I was doing offsites and facilitations and things.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I think it's really interesting, like the origin stories and things like that. Is there anything either of you would like that maybe you wish you had kind of maybe things that have caused you to shift direction of your company as along the way, or make different choices about where you're going or what you want to do or things like that?
I think for me, it comes back to the whole values thing. When I really regret doing a job is when there were red flags, when I accepted to do a job for much less than I, feel I was worth. I think that kind of took the wind out of my sails. So I think the thing is that there, you have to have a cushion of money that you feel okay saying no to a job, right? So, there's in startup or anything that you're doing, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be about money, but it definitely, there's something about a depository of safety, whatever that is, where if you don't get the job, if someone says no or something, that you feel okay in going and doing something else. And by what I mean by doing something else, I get specific about that. Like right now, I have a stretch of time where I am not really busy, and I'm really grateful because right now what I get to do is I get to work on my personal practice. So I'm practicing my letters, I'm practicing my drawing, and I'm painting, and I'm gardening. Oh my gosh, I'm gardening like crazy right now. So all of that is very important for my well-being. And I really believe that having all of those other practices helps me to say yes to the right projects and no to the wrong projects. And that's what I've learned, is to just be really careful about what you say yes to.
Thank you. Brian?
I would completely back that up. That's one of the reasons that I like to do a long discovery, is because I get a good sense of how hard is this client going to be to work with. Mm-hmm. And if I get the sense that this person that I'm working with, that they're going to be a challenge, then, I have this thing that in the back of I've never shared this before, but I call it the a-hole tax, right? And so I will price my, proposal way up. And if, and it's kind of like, okay, how much am I willing to be paid in order to deal with you is what's in there. And it's like, yeah, if somebody's going to come to me and they're going to be a complete jerk, but they'll pay me, $500,000, it's like, sure, I'll do that. So there is a number. So, it's figuring out exactly what is that threshold to be able to deal with that really difficult client. I don't mind the difficult clients, actually. I sort of treat it as a challenge to myself. I've had people that have come to me about, this guy, they're really hard to work with. Would you take them? I'm like, sure, yeah, why not? So it's the ones that I will I have to do a better job though of screening what my clients are all about. I've had a couple, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I've had a couple of things where once I got to know what kind of organization this was and what their culture was and what they stood for and what kind of people were there and who was behind them, it was like, this is something that just doesn't feel right. Again, back to Sarah's values. I used to say that I'd work for anybody. I don't feel like that anymore.
Awesome. I know that's really interesting. Yeah, Sarah.
I also just wanted to add too, because something about what you said, Brian, reminded me also of a turning point for me is really paying attention to personal branding. Because I think that falls into it too, because when you really know what your personal brand is and how your personal brand affects your professional brand, it's way easier to say yes and no, or to know what to say yes and no to. So that's, everything from, how your proposals look to how you show up in a meeting to the words you use, it's that's really I think that's really important too, because you can establish really secure boundaries, and then when someone starts pushing against your boundaries, you can be like, oh no, and you've got you know exactly why you're saying no, or like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to make this exception for you because this fits within my brand. Like I've done projects for practically nothing before because it was great development for me. And also literally the photographs that came out of it, this one client had like a professional photographer show up. The photographs that came out of that project, I use all the time in my own marketing. So yeah, so it's like kind of like thinking about that too, like, who you are and how you show up in the world is a really important thing as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm totally going to plug, like fits in really well. Your branding workshop next week on Thursday, which is really diving into, again, like the difference to the personal, professional, in that note. And so actually, I think kind of one of the last questions, and actually for this question, I'm going to start with Brian and Sarah, and then kind of pass it to everyone else here too. It's going to be the panel getting bigger, but it's really, where is your kind of business energy next? Like maybe do you have a goal? Do you have a kind of how do you want to grow next? Sarah?
Oh, I'm always going first.
Okay, Brian, you go first.
It's so easy to bonus off of you though, Sarah.
See, I know.
So this isn't going to be a surprise to Sarah and Rachel, but the thing that I'm getting really excited about is the idea of moving past what we think of as traditional organizations and companies, moving more towards the holistic organization. So, I mean, Sarah and Rachel and I show up as independent individual sole proprietors. Well, how do we team together, right? How do we help each other and support each other, maybe even sharing some of the same systems and resources in order to really come together as a community. The visual practice is really still pretty new. And one of the things that you see in new industries is that they'll typically start in the garage, and then you'll start to see small teams and then small companies and then so on and so forth. And we're starting to see that first evolution as some large companies are starting to have internal teams of graphic facilitators and graphic recorders. And so, those of us that are doing this as independents, the thing that I'm real interested in is how do we network with each other to show up as something greater than the sum of our parts.
Nice. All right, thank you, Brian. Sarah, where are you looking to grow next?
I have been growing in the direction of workshops. So I've started out as graphic recording, been doing some graphic facilitation, and now I'm creating workshops for my clients that take leadership development concepts and turn them basically into like crafting events. So what we do is whatever my clients, if it's team building or leadership development, whatever their outcome is, what they want, I take that and design a creative experience that gets people out of their brains and into their bodies, because I really believe in the power of learning physically. So we cut paper and fold and build things and draw, and there's lots of color and super messy sometimes, and it's been really fun, and we tell stories, and so that's where I'm headed.
Nice. All right. So this is kind of the question for the rest of the group. Like, where are you looking to grow either your business or your internal work, or who would like to go first?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
So just the one thing that I'm really excited about is I'm doing the second round of an informal mentoring program at my work. And I'm just excited to be refining it. It was really successful the last time, and I want to integrate that professional coaching much earlier. And then the other area I'm excited to grow is just, getting clearer on my portfolio and like my business. Like, I feel like I have bits and pieces. So today's been really helpful. I feel like I have some directions to go.
Great. Nancy, Amanda.
I can echo what Tiffany's saying. So my role is I've recently moved to a new company, and I'm an agile coach. So that helps me to have a lot of opportunities to use the graphic facilitation in workshops, in helping teams to align the strategy to their outcomes, their OKRs, that kind of thing. And also sometimes there is an element of a one-to-one coaching. So that would be something I would be looking at next to use it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Nancy.
And I'm getting ready to launch a big project in my organization related to the accreditation of our school. And so I want to really use it as a platform to go big with the visuals on big paper. I've been flip chart bound for the last bit and scared of giant paper and just need to get in there and do it. So that's why I'm going to really stretch myself here.
Well, it helps to have giant markers.
Yeah, big markers are great.
Big markers, big paper. It's awesome.
That's right.
All right. I do want to kind of start to wrap up. Are there any questions that anybody has that we haven't maybe touched on yet, or that anything you're curious about that came up for you as we were talking?
I would just like to know if you feel comfortable if I might shoot you a question now and again on LinkedIn or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think you can connect with all of us on LinkedIn. I don't know. It sounds like Brian. Saw Brian moves. I'm guessing he might be dropping things in the chat.
And I'll put my email in the chat too. You can email me directly. Anybody can email me directly.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
Tiffany.
Going back to thinking about like lead generation and all that good stuff and building collaborative partnerships. When you go to a networking event, one, which ones do you decide to go to, or what do you consider when you're saying, oh, will I go or not? And then second, what constitutes a successful networking event for you?
Only the ones where I get to draw.
Yes.
Yeah.
With enough bacon.
Exactly, with enough bacon. So I did very early on, I got in touch with my local chamber of commerce, and I said, tell me about your event schedule. What's coming up, right? I didn't tell them that I wasn't a member, by the way. They just sort of assumed that. And they said, well, we're having this kind of like this awards, where we get together. It's the end of the year thing. I said, great. I'd like to do this thing. It's called a graphic recording. Awesome. How much is it going to cost us? Nothing. Right. That one thing where I got to be in front of around 500 business leaders from Fairfax County, it did bring in about $500,000 of clients over the, years that I had them all. So I'm real specific about, if I am going to do pro bono work, like who are the people that are going to be there?
Yeah, and I would differentiate between, I think a lot of the networking I have done is less client focused than peer focused. Because I like working with people, and then it's like, just kind of running around those circles is one way to build relationships. And then, like the networking I've realized is that a lot of them are not, they're just like talking to random people, but like there's never seems to be any follow-up and things like that. So I think, kind of Brian's thing is is really trying to go in different directions. And I guess I don't really network in that way. I just kind of follow my energy. And if I'm interested in something, then I'll go to like a content I'm interested in and then talk to people around that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just one thought.
Yeah. And then I'll add to that, I've also done the Chamber of Commerce. It was not as successful. But I will say that the drawing is really important. So whatever room you get into, either be just drawing like a sketch note, or if you can actually, get up in front of people, or if you can get an iPad projected, that goes a long way to help people understand what it is you do. Because you can just be like, oh, I'm a visual practitioner, and helps you understand this sort of thing. But when people actually physically feel what's happening to them, when they see it happening, it's way better. Like I was invited to a meeting a few weeks ago where there were like 12 people, and they were all, company owners and CEOs or whatever. They'd never seen graphic recording. And my girlfriend had put it together. It was a panel discussion, kind of like this, just to get some information. And I recorded the whole time. And I got like 5 phone calls out of it. It's just incredible. They were just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Now we're in discovery right now, but the fact that people got activated and interested. And then the other thing I'd like to say about the two is that because so many visual practitioners are solopreneurs, or we all work by ourselves or something, we often run into times where we need people to support us and help and that sort of thing. So really, like a really great networking opportunity is just meeting other graphic or other visual practitioners, like in meetings like this, and with IFVP and Scribes, other Scribes meetups and that sort of thing. And just sort of getting into the community is really helpful, because you could if you don't get a call to help, like I might be doing a job next week because one of my friends isn't going to be here and can't do it. So, there's a lot of like work that gets passed between the practitioners.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other kind of questions or things that came up? All right. I do want to kind of just start closing down. I know that I just want to thank you for coming, and I really hope this is helpful. And just kind of, we did a lot of different things. It's very informal, and I actually really liked it. It's like conversational, a pretty informal panel conversation. So thank you, Brian and Sarah, for just kind of rolling with however it worked out. So I do want to, take that document that, sent earlier. And I really also like, that's something that I developed. And so just in general, like if you have feedback, if it was helpful, things like that, I really would welcome that. And hopefully it is helpful in some way to everybody. I would like to just go around to do a bit of a closing. So maybe just, we can say one word. I have this on a spreadsheet, but one word about what, like one takeaway you got today, and then one action that you might take in the next week. Who would like to start? Anybody?
I'll jump in. Oh, no, go ahead.
I think I got a little nudge to be more intentful.
Okay, thank you.
So 2 words, nudge and intentful.
Tiffany?
Yeah, I'm going to steal Amanda's word because it's good. Intentional, and writing up some case studies. I really like that idea.
All right, Nancy?
I guess the word would be encouraged by hearing the advice and the perspectives of Rachel, Sarah, and Brian.
All right, glad. Brian?
Sure. So my takeaway is asking what's next, and my action is extemporaneous videos.
I want to know more about that, but
And then Mine is, well, mine is meeting design, because I'm doing, more workshops and these sorts of things. And I'm going to look into that session lab. I think it's come up before, but I haven't really gotten into it. So I'm circling and underlining session lab. So that's my motivation.
Yeah, session log is great. All right, well, I think that's all we have. So I might go ahead and just thank you for coming, Nova Scribes. Again, Sarah's branding workshop is next Thursday. So it's Thursday the 19th at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Mhm.
And then just keep an eye out for other upcoming Nova Scribes workshops. And I'm gonna go ahead and
And
thank you.
thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yeah.